Okay guys, today we're looking at the lead wrist at the top of the backswing. Now this is an area that will help most golfers. If you're a slicer, this is a definite to try and do. If you want to hit the ball with a draw, this is a definite try to do. And again, most elite players or elite ball strikers will have their wrist with hardly any what we call cupping or extension at the top of the swing, and they make that work very successfully. There are outliners, there are different ways of doing it, there are different patterns you can have in the downswing to make it work with more a cupped wrist at the top. Not what I'd recommend, but if you do it successfully, then by all means carry on. So keep watching to learn how this lead wrist should work and how we can make you change it within a couple of different concepts. Okay, so we're looking at lead wrist, and what we really notice with elite players is they don't get a lot of what we would class as extension with the lead wrist at the top of the swing. They get much more a flatter wrist or even a bowed wrist. Not every player, there is outliners, there are different players, but there are certainly patterns that we would see. Talking to one of my friends the other day who is a biomech who's tested a load of tall players, he said to me, very rarely does he see a tall player with more than 10 degrees of wrist extension at the top of the swing. Now the guys that have more wrist extension at the top of the swing will then go into more what we call flexion in the downswing to make that pattern work. If you have a wrist that's flat or even in flexion at the top of the swing, what will tend to happen is it'll probably go into more extension in the downswing but still be in flexion overall. The key thing is really at impact, when we look at all great ball strikers, is the wrist is in flexion, and generally speaking most good players, the flexion increases on the way down somewhat as well. Today we're really looking at how we can get the left wrist nearer to that 10 degree or less position at the top of the backswing. And again, if you're a slicer of the ball, getting this wrist flatter or even into flexion or bowed is going to be essential. So I'm going to look at 3 different ways for you to be able to do this. We're going to use some external bits and pieces to try and help it, and also just using the feels within your right hand and left hand. So let's get stuck in. So I'm going to use hack motion just to measure my wrist, just to give this somewhat a bit of validation. So I'm going to stick my mobile phone here on the floor there. Now, as I swing the golf club back here, that right there is 9 degrees of wrist extension at the top of the swing. As I go this way, that now goes into minus numbers, as you'll see by the data provided in the screen also. So if I go ahead and hit a normal shot, generally speaking, my wrist is in extension at the top. And again, it's not the be-all and end-all as long as it goes into that flexion as we start down. But the key is, my wants or beliefs will be that we want to have it with not a lot of extension at the top. As I said, 10 degrees is a nice number. So if I set up to a golf ball now, swing to the top, that would be a nice number right there. Let's try and hit one and see what we get. Okay, so that one at the top was 15 degrees. And that's pretty much where I am normally. And at contact, I'm -3. That's probably a little bit less than I am normally. But 15 degrees, so that's not where I want it to be. So how would I train that now to get under that magic 10 degrees? So one thing I could do, obviously, is use this software and practice doing swings. And I could use some biofeedback that this provides me to do to make that changes. I'm not going to do that with you today because I want you to have some ways of fixing it yourself. So the first ways of making a change we're going to look at is actually working on how we feel the wrists and where they are in space and time. So if I go to the top of my backswing now and try and feel that my right wrist goes into more extension, so bends back more towards my forearm at the top, and just see how that affects that lead wrist number. There you go, -0, 1 degrees. So I'm going to hit one now, and that's going to be my sole thought. So the right wrist extending back. A little rehearsal. Good number. Hard work that. 2 degrees. So definitely made a difference there. Definitely got my wrist flat at the top. But it felt like I moved heaven and earth to be able to get that position. Trust me, it felt massively different. Probably on video from past experience doing this, I'm probably going to like the way it looks. But that felt really, really strange. So that's way number 1. Way number two is thinking of something a little bit more what we call external. So I'm going to stick a tennis ball on the shaft here. And the idea being basically at the top of the swing, again to get the wrist in deflection, I'm going to try and rotate that tennis ball so the shaft rotates into what we'd feel is a more closed position with the club face. And you'll see there, -11, -12. So thinking of something more away from me is that more external thinking. So some people are better off thinking of things closer to them, like their internal body stuff or the hands. Some people are shaft, some people are club head. That's essentially what we're going to ask you to do, is think of the shaft or the club head as the two other things you would do. You could also use the lead wrist itself, put a T-peg in it and so on. There's lots of different ways of doing this. But trail wrist, shaft and club head are the three ways I'm going to ask you to think of this. So I'm going to try and hit one now with a tennis ball. The tennis ball will fly off. It's not stuck on. We can also use a bit of tape if we wanted to. Tape it to the club so we can see how that moves. But let's just try and move that tennis ball around here as we swing. Again, felt weird, -2 with that. So based on the evidence, more external helped me a bit. Okay, the third way is thinking more about this club head. So again, at the top of the swing, if we said that's a square club face, I'm going to try and get that club face pointing up to the sky. Now obviously that's going to be closed, and you might say I don't want the club face to be closed. It's not really about that, it's about training this wrist. If the club face did get closed with a good left wrist, the grip is going to be what we call in a strong position at address. So it'll be in a position at address that we do not want. So trying to just feel we're getting this club face more in that closed position is what we're going to look at to change the wrist conditions. Three degrees. Again, pretty successful, pretty good. Under 10 degrees was the goal start of the session. And what we noticed there is the best results came from me with trying to rotate the shaft, which is very similar to the face, but that's what gave me the best results. Obviously, I try and base that on more evidence, more shots, but it definitely felt different to normal. It felt weird, a bit uncomfortable. Change is uncomfortable, so embrace that. The idea is on the golf course maybe not to have as much change as that, but maybe have a practice swing that will give you that feel, and then go ahead with a simple swing thought to make you play better and change what you do. Okay, so there you have it. Thanks for watching the video on the lead wrist. Please ask some questions down below or comments or feedback. Really welcome them. Also, if you've enjoyed the video, please like and share it. And also, if you haven't already, please follow or subscribe me by clicking my logo down below. Really want to help you with your golf and lower your scores. Thanks for joining me today at the Forest of Arden. See you back here real soon.